Very good afternoon. Welcome to ANN7. I'm Peter van Onselen. Another Sunday afternoon. The morning began earlier this morning with yet another flurry of source-based, sometimes malicious articles that would have you believe that the Gupta-owned Tegeta Resources is milking Eskom and what's being propagated as state capture. On ANN7 today, we expose some of the real stories on the Cold War that's playing out behind the scenes. The real reason why Eskom and the Guptas are being attacked. Now, the Citypress article this morning claiming that Eskom quietly awarded a 564 million rand contract to Gupta-linked Tegeta in April. But what they don't tell you is where was no secrecy in that deal, and that short-term suppliers were asked to fill in a gap left by three who pulled out. These are some of the allegations that were made in that Citypress article. The article also claims that Tegeta used Eskom's contract to bail out Optimum Mines. What it also does not tell you is that Optimum's positive outlook today is due to a production efficiency, which has been doubled since that takeover. Taking a look at other aspects of the Citypress article, the article claims that their mine was projected to make a loss of 100 million rand a month. But sources say that it does not say that the 100 million rand loss was brought under control after the takeover due to efficiency and increased productivity. Well, joining me this afternoon, we have the pleasure of welcoming OPA Investments CEO Nazim Howe, as well as political analyst Tsepo Khadima, as well as economic analyst Fikile Bili, just to try and set the record straight on these articles and the new mine that has been purchased by Tegeta Exploration and Resources around Optimum Coal. A very good afternoon to all of you. Nazim, obviously I'm going to start with you. Another pressure time for you. A lot of questions now being asked about, I guess, the negotiation process that took place. Take us back to the negotiations. Question marks over the Guptas being involved with this negotiation, as well as the involvement of Duduzane Zuma. Just trying to take us through those negotiations.
Thanks, Peter. You know, it would seem that no matter what happens, the Guptas will be put in the middle of this. If we take ourselves back, you'll remember on about April the 8th, the newspapers were writing about the Guptas flying out in the dead of night and all the rest of it. Then today we see a newspaper article suggesting a week later a meeting was held to solidify this deal. Well, the truth behind it is I was called to a meeting by Eskom, who requested that we increase our coal supply. I was there together with 2 or 3 other executives from the OPA Investments Group. Not one Gupta was there, not one Duduzane Zuma was there. We were engaged by Eskom, who said they had a bit of a challenge to close their gap of supply for the winter months at Arnott. Our coal, fortunately, is of sufficient quality to meet the technical requirements at Arnott. They then asked us whether we could do it. We were in business rescue, and business rescue, as you know, is a very tough thing on any business. You don't have credit, you don't have the ability to generate credit, and at the same time, you'll recall our banks were closed. So we were not that keen to do it on the basis that we didn't have the facilities to do it. We then engaged with them with about the possibility of a prepayment to help us fund expansion and growth so that we don't impact Hendrina or any other coal supply contract we have. We wanted to ensure we met all our contractual obligations with Eskom. We agreed on a prepayment, but they also took their pound of flesh out of us. They demanded a discount against that prepayment. At that stage, it was very clear to me, as it is today, that prepayments are not something new to Eskom. They've done it historically, and particularly of 80% of their supply are the historically advantaged companies, let me call them that. They've had contracts with Eskom for 40 years. They've built their businesses on prepayments through a cost-plus model. So, you know, the allegation against us must take cognizance of
Let's talk a little bit about then the pricing, because that's where an issue is coming. If you want to look there, Eskom quietly awarded a 564 million rand contract to Gupta-linked Tegeta. Explain to us the pricing structures, because there seems to be some controversy around Hendrina, you selling coal there at 174 rand a tonne, and on it's 580 rand a tonne, yet they're 50 kilometers away. Explain to us.
Well, you know, let's be clear about it. I'm going to give you a bit of history before I come to that question. The bit of history is that until December 2015, Exxaro was supplying the Arnott power station on a 40-year cost-plus deal, where Eskom funded their capital as well as their operating cost and gave them a profit. Nobody ever questioned that deal. At the close of the deal, they were supplying coal to Eskom at 1,132 rand a tonne. Along came poor little Tegeta, a very small operator in this market, We're supplying at around 480 is our base cost. We're supplying coal to that mine at the right quality. Now let me talk a bit about the question you've asked. Yes, we do supply in Drina, which is slightly lower quality coal to what we have to supply to Arnott. Each power station within Eskom requires a particular set of technical specifications for coal. No one is the same. So that coal has to be beneficiated in some way to get to a higher quality. But we've never reneged on our obligations to Drina or any other coal contract we have with Eskom. We've met all our obligations.
Nazib, we've also got on the line the Eskom chairman, Dr. Ben Ngubane, is joining us now live on the line. Very good afternoon, Dr. Ngubane. I appreciate your time. My question to you is this afternoon, why did you not take possession of 458,000 tonnes of coal at that price of 174 Rand a tonne, but then allow Tegeta to use them to increase its supply to Arnott?
Well, it's the quality of coal, obviously, that determines what we pay. The CV and the gigajoules with the Arnott coal is much higher than that at optimum. It is actually export-grade coal. So our technicians test these things, and they come to a conclusion, and we trust their judgment.
I mean, Dr. Ngubane, considering what's happened over the past sort of 6 months involving the Gupta family, involving their companies in Oakbay Investments, I mean, did you guys reconsider awarding this contract to Tegeta, considering their links to the Gupta family?
We don't really care about what politics does or say. We are concerned about the commercial sense of what we do, the contracts we enter into. As long as they are to the benefit of Eskom, in terms of volume and quality of coal supplied, we will contract. There is nothing absolutely wrong, or why should we listen to newspaper articles about a business that we have decided is going to meet our objectives and supply our needs?
Dr. Ngubane, there are issues around the timing of the awarding of these contracts. And this, I'm quoting from the Citypress article that was published this morning, saying that Eskom issued a request for the proposal of up to 5 million tonnes of coal a year for Arnott Power Station. The deadline for the bidding in September. Many people saying that you delayed this negotiation or the awarding of these contracts to benefit the Gupta family. Is that true?
No, but this is pure speculation. It is malice, in fact. What we were concerned with was securing enough supplies to meet our coal demand throughout the winter. So we did put out a request to different companies. They could not meet our specifications. They could not meet our volumes and quality. Then Tegeta managed to meet all what we wanted. And there was no delay, there was no plotting. It was simply a commercial need that was met by Tegeta.
You just hold on the line there, Dr. Ngubane. I'm going to come back to you. Fikile, I'm going to come to you now as well as Tsepo. But Nazim, the timing is an interesting one here, considering the delay that happened in the awarding of these. What is your side of the story when it comes to these delays?
Well, you know, that is something I think that is best answered by Eskom, and I think Dr. Ngubane has explained it very, very well. But we've, together with 7 others, have been a supplier to Arnott from January. We only had 100,000 supplied, I think, January into February. So we've been a small supplier. I think we've supplied 15% of the total requirement. So I don't see anything into it. I think, you know, from our point of view, we are a small coal company. We're going to look for opportunities to supply product. We're going to ensure that we meet the specifications required. And I think we're going to be very concerned about ensuring that we don't have load shedding. So when Eskom says to us security of supply, we try and meet their requirement. And, you know, to date, 10 months or 12 months later, we haven't had a single bit of load shedding. And that is really because I think we can partner with Eskom as well as other companies to ensure coal security is met.
Interesting. Fikile, I'm going to come to you. Looking at it from an economic perspective, it's a big risk for someone like Tegeta to take on Optimum, such a big loss-making business. What do you make of this acquisition?
Look, you know, I would tell you something. In South Africa today, we don't have load shedding, because in South Africa today, we've got young emerging black companies supplying Eskom. Today, Eskom does not have load shedding. Why did they have it in the past? That tells you currently Eskom is under good management. You know, you look at the likes of the CEO, Brian Molefe, the chairperson, Mr. Ngubane, and the entire board of Eskom. Now today, in South Africa, the capitalist, when black people are doing well in the mining sector and supplying the parastatals like Eskom, it's a pain to them. You know, we as South Africans, we are grateful for what Tageta and Eskom have achieved, which is to save cost for the country, for the nation. Because of his Tageta linked to the Guptas, Zuma and political parties, now people want to make it a big fuss. Let's give young black business opportunities to supply Eskom. If Tageta can give Eskom such a huge discount, who else can do it besides Tageta? I am applauding Eskom for making such a brave decision. Now, on the issue of not following process, I am currently appointed by Eskom. Those people, they don't just appoint you tomorrow and you start working. They go through a lot of processes. You know what I mean? I understand Eskom's got capacity. Now, simply because it is Tageta, but for the fact that Eskom have saved over R1 billion by using Tageta, and it's also saved the economy, I strongly support the decision taken by Eskom to support young small business, irrespective of their political affiliation. Now, going forward, as South Africans, we must be very careful. The capitalists are no longer into supply. They've been looting Eskom with billions of rands for over the years. Now that a black company is coming forward with a discounted supply, they are no longer the favorite. Now they see it fit to go to the media. You must also understand one thing. Who owns the media? Is the capitalist. They want to make it sure that everyone that emerge from a BE point of view and is doing well and is providing good services, they want to make it a point that those people don't make it going forward. So as South Africans, we must be very careful of what we read and what we listen to. Let's support local business. Let's support black business. If Eskom can save R1 billion, why not? Brian Molefe is doing a good job. Mr. Ngubane is doing a good job. Going forward, I would say, let's use this Tageta. If they can give us coal on a cheaper price, let's do it. And for the fact that they say the process was not followed, if you're working with Eskom and they want you to expand their supply, you don't need to advertise a contract. They'll only tell you that, can you increase the supply? If you give Eskom 50 tons of coal and they need 100 tons, why should they go for tender for 50 tons if there's a competitive service provider who can supply and who can even give a cheaper price? So South Africans must never be fooled. You must understand one thing. Currently, the economy is not controlled by politicians. It's controlled by the so-called capitalists. The things that they say and do are the ones that are affecting our economy, not our political dynamics and situation. So South Africans must be very careful. When you listen to these things, when you read about these things, you must know the dynamics. It's people who are bitter, who used to supply Eskom with coal, who are very, 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 very disappointed that today Okbey can supply cheaper coal and in a better price. So going forward, it's just a question of jealousy. But we hope that in the future, we'll have more small black business who will supply Eskom with more coal.
Fikile, I mean, Tsepo, considering the deal with the Gupta family, it does become a political issue here because with so much scrutiny on the family and Oakbay investments at the moment. I mean, do you think the decision for Eskom to continue or add extra business to Oakbay was a good decision?
Yeah, I think we're talking this on the backdrop of the article that appeared chiefly in Citypress today. For me, it is very lamentable that which Benjamin Franklin once said, that the only truth in the newspapers is the advertisements, seems to be the truth of the day in South Africa. That all else that you read, you find that is falsehood that is based on malice. And that article, having just read it and gone through it and analyzed it, in fact, is a very dangerous article. And it once again calls for a greater scrutiny on our media in South Africa, because it appears that they are hell-bent on publishing falsehood that is malicious, to achieve a particular end that does not take this country anywhere forward. Now, to your question specifically, that what should Eskom have done? It would have been tragic if Eskom had listened to political murmurings and the noise that is out there instead of contracting in a commercially sound manner. And what is a commercially sound manner? When one looks at almost all of the Eskom coal-fired power stations, they were designed and situated on what is referred to as a mine mouth for a very specific reason. For coal mining, and particularly for coal-fired power stations, you look at two key things that are the holy grail. That is geology and geography. So the reason why most of those power stations are located in mine mouth was to ensure that they can be...
The fact that Duduzane Zuma is part of all of this process,
Well,
that's what the reality is.
Every single person who lives within the borders of this republic is protected by the Constitution. If anybody can go out there and be shouting Constitution, but at the very same breath, be wanting to trample upon the constitutional rights of other South Africans, that person is nothing but a hypocrite. Whether it's Duduzane Zuma, whether it is Piet van Pugenpoel, anybody, it doesn't matter. The Constitution protects everybody else, and all of us, it is important for us to note that this Constitution accords us certain rights, and those rights must be protected.
Okay,
but on this matter of coal, I just want to stress that on what I've just said, it is absolutely, it is absurd that Eskom can be expected to pay an average of 49 rand per megajoule when, based on where most of the power stations are located, at the very outside, it should be about 17 rand a megajoule that they pay. 49 rand a megajoule, it is daylight robbery. And I am hoping that Eskom, in fact, will not be deterred by this noise, but that they will push on forward to ensure that they continue to source coal and procure at the least cost available, because coal is sourced here. 44 rand to 49 rand is what the power stations in India as well as in China are paying on average. Anything above 17 rand, believe me, is a daylight robbery. Okay, what we have found happening is that the mining companies largely have not been paying attention to geology and ensuring that they can be a least cost producer. And I'm happy to debate that with anybody who's in the coal mining space, because it's an industry that I understand very well.
Nasim, let's have a look at what else the Citypress said today. You're refuting a lot of that. They said Tegeta used the Eskom contract to bail out Optimum Mines.
Absolute nonsense. I think, you've got to look at the performance of Optimum since our involvement. And we really came in there as, I would say, as independent bystanders from January 1 because of the way the deal was structured. At that stage, the current owners at that stage told us that we'd be losing 100 million rand a month. We never came close to that loss. We managed to put in place several efficiencies. We managed to increase production. Today, production at Optimum is, last month, we did just over 800,000 tons in the month. When we got the mine, it was 400,000. So we've doubled the amount of coal we're pushing out. So it also puts a paid to the nonsense they suggest that we've diverted coal from Hendrina to Arnott. We have doubled the amount of coal we're pulling out of the ground. And, so really absolute rubbish from them.
That's one of the points that was raised. Let's go back to Dr. Ngubane. It's obviously a difficult time considering the supply, but I guess good that no load shedding has been said. Now, the other aspect that needs to be touched on here is the awarding of this. I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked to Nazim. In terms of those negotiations, did you buy in what he said in terms of the awarding of those? Were the Guptas ever at any of those meetings that you attended?
No, I didn't. I don't attend operational meetings as chairman of the board. However, I must stress that other people were approached. They could not meet our requirements in terms of quality and quantity. And the other important point we must bear in mind, the coal cost or the coal budget is 45 billion rand. It's been going to 5 large companies, the lion's share of it. There are only 15 black coal miners supplying Eskom. We want to double that or even increase it even further, because the 45 billion rand that we spend on coal supplies must surely be shared across this country's economy and benefit the majority of the people of this country, not just a few monopolistic giants in the coal industry. That is the objective, and Eskom is not going to be deterred from doing this in terms of the political machinations, in terms of the gossips and insinuations. We will do what is correct in terms of the NDP. We will do what is correct in terms of Eskom philosophy. We want to develop small business entrepreneurs, small miners, and that is the objective of government.
We'll come back to you. That's on one aspect. Nazim, let's look at the other one. You did mention earlier that you are producing enough for those two contracts. It's not as if you're diverting coal from one end to the other. You are producing enough coal to
Absolutely correct.
to do those same
Correct.
ones.
Absolutely correct.
Now, the other question is obviously the bank's issue. We know as better as anyone that the OPE bank accounts have been shut. How did you then finance this? How did you come up with the 2.1 billion rand for the purchase of this mine?
Let's go back, and no business would sign a deal or a sale and purchase agreement without proof of funding. So we had to provide proof of funding back in December last year, and that had to be reconfirmed before the end of March. That was the terms and conditions of the deal. So there was absolutely no relationship between the two. How did we do it? A mixture of debt and our own funding. That's how we did it. I think perhaps the reason for all these questions, and I really had to chuckle at the end of Citypress, was really the almost questioning commentary from the journalists, not reporting, but commentary, about how the hell did these guys do this? It could not have been possible. They had no banking facility. How did they do this? Well, we did it, and we'll do it again. Essentially, we approached another bank, a foreign bank. We got some bank debt, and we did it through our own funding. But we'll continue. Nothing's going to deter us. I think the requirement for us today to change our economy determines all of us who are committed to the future of this country to make extraordinary efforts to impact on our country and to benefit all South Africans. And that's going to be the motto that drives our business.
You want to weigh in?
Yeah, I want to comment on what you were saying when you asked the question of why the Oak Bank bank accounts were shut down. You can see this was a strategy. How do you investigate people's tenders with Eskom, and the next thing you close their bank account? It's clear that there is a plan to make sure that this Oak Bay does not survive in South Africa. But also I want to call government to order today. They must listen when I say next year they must open the Black Bank, which is going to be managed by South Africans, because these banks don't belong to South Africa. The investors are not South Africans. We need our own banks in this country so that we must do our own funding. Simply because of these people are related or assumed to be related with a political party, now they are trying to cause a disorderly situation. They are not even considering the fact that how many people are involved. Where have you seen? I mean, if I were to win tenders, 5 of them, different government department, do you think all those departments will cancel my tenders? So this thing was planned, that we will make sure that they don't progress, because the capitalists and the banks were funding the same Eskom projects, because by then the banks could finance the capitalists in order to supply Eskom. Now that they are no longer in the forefront, now they make it a point that the black company that is supplying, we are going to make sure that we close all the loopholes in order for them to survive. It was very unfair to what has happened to the company on the banks. And going forward, I don't think South Africans should be biased and think that simply because these people are related to certain people, they must be treated unfairly. I strongly believe, like any other person, even if you are a foreigner in South Africa, if you have a bank account, for the fact that you have not proved corruption, you don't have proof. Please let it not be a question of hearsay and start disorganizing and causing disorderly situation. Because by closing those banks, actually today, how many families are going to go to bed without food? How many children will not have school uniforms and etc.? I mean, it's a capitalist mentality to destroy the current situation.
Nazim, can you sit here and tell us that all processes were transparent in terms of the contracts awarded between yourselves and Eskom?
Absolutely. And I'm making that challenge to anybody else. I think our challenge today is, I noted from a statement from Eskom a short while ago, Together's contracts were reviewed by the Auditor General and by National Treasury. I wish the same review happened with all other companies, because then we'll get to the fact of what the cost of coal production is and who's benefiting. 80% of Eskom's coal supply comes from 5 companies. We are really so small in the market, yet all the noise, all the media attention is on us.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think, in a large way, Together is a small black-owned company. If you go back 6 months, and I'm very glad that my colleague here says he knows the industry very well. If you go back 4, 5, 6 months, coal was really the resource nobody wanted to write about, nobody wanted to talk about. It didn't make the newspapers. Then the small black-owned company dared to poke its head into this business, in this industry. Better still, it managed to pull off a miraculously big deal. It got into the space where the big players were. It started creating some transparency around coal pricing. And the harsh reality is, if you say to yourself, Exxaro and Arnott, 1,132 was the price per ton. Today it's down at 500 Rand. 1 billion Rand saving just from that deal. I worked it out to be 2 billion on an annualized basis would be the saving to Eskom. That does cause people some discomfort. Because, if we can disrupt this industry like this, what more can we do? It is a very settled industry, and we are a disruptor. And the disruptor will be punished. But again, as a group, we're going to keep the best interests of South Africa at heart. And in doing that, we'll take whatever punishment comes our way. But we will do the right thing. We're very happy for anybody to audit our books. We're very happy for anybody to do anything around these issues. But our only plea is, let's come with facts. Don't come with nameless sources. Don't come with innuendo. Don't come with those claims. If we've done something wrong, show us where we've done wrong. We'll take ownership. That's a challenge we've made forever. The ANC process is just completed, and nobody has come forward on those issues after so much noise. I think now this is another attempt to throw mud at us. But we will resist it, because we know we are clear, we are clean, we've done arm's length, transparent relations with Eskom. Those relations were done and managed by myself. I take full responsibility for them. I stand very firmly. They are good contracts and done properly.
I'm going to come back to you now, Nazim. One last question, Dr. Ngubane, for you. I mean, obviously the whole world, the whole of South Africa are looking at the whole concept of state capture. I'd like to get your views on state capture, the concept around it. And do you think we actually in South Africa are the Gupta family capturing the state?
Well, I mean, this is quite ridiculous. For 40 years, 5 companies have shared between themselves or among themselves 38 billion rands of prepayments for coal supplies to Eskom. These are the people who controlled Eskom. And if you want to talk of state capture, that is the type of behavior that you can describe as state capture, not the 18% or 15% or 5% that belongs to the black coal miners. Therefore, the concept becomes ridiculous. We want to liberate the market and open it up to all black miners as long as they meet our specifications, quality, quantity. That's what we are going to do. Forget about the issue of state capture, because the state was captured long ago when the Nationalist Party came into government.
Interesting, Dr. Ngubane. One last question, one further question for you, Nazim, in terms of your announcement, Oak Bay's announcement that Duduzane Zuma would be stepping aside from Oak Bay Investments as well as the Gupta family. But yet again, we see here that he's got a percentage stake in this whole process. How would you explain that?
Well, he's always had a shareholding in Together. And when you take a decision to step down as a shareholder, not as a shareholder, as an executive and then as a shareholder, it takes a while to offload shares. You have to find the right buyer, and that's a process he has to undergo. But Duduzane plays no active role in any part of the business. He's a shareholder, he's a passive shareholder. That's why I can say with all confidence, to get the decisions, look in my direction. Look in the direction of the group executive committee that manages the business day to day.
And your relationship with Brian Molefe?
Brian and I studied for a short while together.
So it's a good one.
I'm going to say to you, Brian is a very strange individual, and without insulting him, he's one of the toughest negotiators going on. I think when you're friends, he's even tougher on you to ensure that prudency prevails. So I wish I didn't know him at all. I think I'd have an easier ride with him. But that is the nature of Brian Molefe, and he's a very good leader. If you remember, Transnet was a basket case before Brian Molefe got there. He turned it around to make it one of the most successful operations going. If you go look at his career at Eskom, he joined Eskom when load shedding was a regular event. He's created an Eskom now that we don't understand. We've forgotten what load shedding is. That's the kind of person Brian Molefe is. So it's actually unfair to try and taint him in this process.
Let's talk a little bit about, again, back to the political side of things. The fact that Duduzane Zuma is a shareholder in the business, being the president's son, who's a friend with the Gupta family. It's always going to be a difficult and uphill battle in a PR and marketing perspective. But yet, it seems as though Tegeta and OPA investments continue to grow. Do you find that bizarre?
Not really. Look, there's an Irish proverb that says that no matter how tall your grandfather was, you have to do your own growing up. Duduzane Zuma, or like any other children of politicians, they have to be their own persons. For example, my father was a businessman, but I have to live on my own and not live under the shadow of my own father. And the constitution of this republic, which we all are proud of, we should embrace it wholeheartedly and not be hypocrites who selectively refer to it. So whether it's Duduzane Zuma or anybody else, we shouldn't care. What we should care about is that is Eskom or any other business for that matter that has got a significant role to play in the economy of this republic, are they being able to operate efficiently and reliably? And if that is, those questions are answered, therefore we should all applaud that. And I feel that, based on the information at hand, that Eskom seems to have done well in negotiating to continue to procure coal at a much lesser rate. And if we look at 1132 compared to 500 rand or so, we should be applauding them. If it was a different time, if we didn't have the odious hypocrisy we have in this country, in fact, Tegeta would have been applauded even for the optimum coal mine acquisition, because we have to take into account that just over 2 years ago, Glencore acquired the same property for 8 billion rand. And for them to now have to sell it at 2.1 billion for a whole host of other reasons, I believe that it was a stroke of a genius from an acquisition point of view. And I always wondered, had it not been that the Gupta family were involved or there were black people involved in this acquisition, which I maintain is a stroke of a genius, they would have been on the top of each and every financial application and publication in this country, because it's an excellent deal. They bought value cheap. And that is the basis of investment. If you can be able to buy value cheap, you must be applauded. And I think that what Tegeta has done in this case has effectively opened a can of worms, because Eskom is now having to renegotiate most of the coal contracts that were signed 30, 40 years ago. And those coal contracts, they obviously now going to go into those negotiations armed with what the real cost of production is. And I suspect very strongly that the big mining companies are very concerned that they will not be able to demand the exorbitant prices that have been demanded without them ensuring that they can be a low-cost producer at all costs. There should never be any reason for Eskom to pay more than 17 rand a megajoule, and most of the Eskom power stations, they are calibrated to burn between 21 and 23 megajoules. So there you can be able to work out what the price per ton should be when you take into account what the megajoules are that are burnt in that coal. So therefore, I think that as South Africans, we must really be on guard to ensure that people, those that I think that they are the enemies of progress, should not be using the privileged media platforms that they have to go and tarnish by maligning people who or companies that are diligently ensuring that we can continue to create jobs and continue to ensure that this economy grows. That is very unfortunate, and we must fight it, because if we do not, we will see a continual decline of this economy, and that will be tragic. And Eskom is an exceedingly important player in ensuring that this economy is sustainable, and therefore they need our support and not our condemnation, as currently has been the case.
Well, just to remind our viewers this afternoon, the special edition is being brought to you in an effort to bring out the truth in the face of continuous and all-round media propaganda in economical truth and motivated at best. Apart from the Citypress and the Sunday Times article this morning, Mnet's carte blanche this evening is dealing with the alleged Eskom capture issue. Now, ANN7 did invite a carte blanche journalist, Devi Sankri-Govender, to join the show today, but she showed no interest in that. This is a forum where the CEO Resources of Oak Bay has promised her to deal with all those questions. Looks like, Nazim, are you concerned about that? Is there anything that you're worried about? It did say also in the Citypress article that, and I quote, Tegeta declined to respond to a detailed list of questions, saying, and I quote again, "We are committed to the future sustainability of profitability of Optimum. Our strategy for the Optimum mine will be announced in due course." Many people might think that you're running from something.
Absolutely not. You know, what our history has taught us over the past few months is no matter what answer we give to some journalists, they're going to beat us. You know, it reminds me of what we were taught in journalism. You know, it's ask the question, have you stopped beating your wife? There's no right answer to it. And I think that's been the approach to a lot of media inquiries around us. Our position today is we'll do any live interview with any party, broadcast party, simply because it avoids the ability for them to twist the truth. So our offer to carte blanche was, let us come on live this evening. We don't want to pre-record. They declined that on the basis that they said the format doesn't suit it. Now, we're in the TV business. That can never be a justifiable excuse. We then said to them, let us do a pre-record, but no editing of the pre-record. They declined that offer as well. So we then said to them, so we're going to do a show at 4 p.m. Come on to our show. Come and ask your 21 questions in a live format. Because we have nothing to hide. We are that confident. And we make that call to carte blanche again today. Come on to ANN7 if your format doesn't allow it. We'll do a live broadcast, bring whatever other journalists you want. Let us debate these issues, because we know that what we've done is correct. We know that we can defend it. We've done nothing wrong. But the worry for me, Peter, and you're a journalist and a veteran journalist, is it not strange when 2 or 3 media houses come with the same angles, the same questions, the same everything else?
Why do you think they're doing that, Nazim?
Well, I think, you know, they are I think they're leaning on sources who want to push a particular agenda. And perhaps my sadness as also a media veteran is that, you know, life has taught us as journalists, ask the question, why am I being told this? I don't believe journalists are doing that enough. Because you've got to say to yourself now, and I saw the statement from Eskom this afternoon, where they pointed out glaring factual errors in the Citypress story. But, you know, it's an inconvenient truth. It really is an inconvenient truth. It is an inconvenient truth to say it's cheaper for Tegeta to supply this coal to Eskom. It's an inconvenient truth. It doesn't sit well. It doesn't fit the narrative. And I think for that reason, I think we opt not to respond in that way, because we won't be getting a fair hearing. But on a live broadcast and the challenge today, let me make it again. Carte blanche, come and meet us in a live forum. Any live forum, we're happy to come in and answer these questions.
Look, I mean, I just want to also stress that if it wasn't for Eskom, the 5 major coal mining companies that are currently supplying Eskom would not have been there. So that's a fact. They are big companies today because of the role that Eskom played in their formation, in guaranteeing them offtake and in guaranteeing them income, that they could be able then to be funded and to become as big as they are. But also it's important to know that why is the coal mining and mining in general least transformed of all the major industries in this country? And one has to take into account that before 2004, when the Minerals and Petroleum Resource Development Act was introduced, we had what is now referred to as the old order rights. And all of these major companies are operating under the old order rights. But the tragedy of when the new Mineral Petroleum Resource Development Act was introduced was that it gave the incumbents an option to convert from what was old order to new order. And then we ended up with a situation whereby they cherry-picked only that which was geologically viable, geologically vast, is what they kept. and they returned to the state to relicense that which was marginal, that which was high cost, and that which was least explored. So that is a problem that we are sitting with, that it is impossible to then transform the industry with that type of a regime that we saw coming in place. And today we are seeing continued resistance by these big mining companies to transform and ensure that black ownership is not something that is just spoken of, but is something that is encouraged and is something that they are putting resources to ensure that it happens, because it is important for our socio-economic stability as a country that the mining sector be transformed, but also that the ownership, if a large part of it is resident in South Africa, we would have seen a greater deal of investment going into increased production in mining. We would not have been sitting with a situation where last week Statistics South Africa told us that the mining output shrinked by 18%. And this continues to be a worrisome factor, even more so for Eskom, that is very much reliant on coal supplies from these major companies. That question that I think the chairman of Eskom probably can shed more light into is that what is the state of readiness of these major companies that are continuing to supply 95% of the coal into Eskom in terms of being able to supply at the least cost possible, or are they holding a gun to the head of Eskom to ensure that they now they increase the average price to unsustainable levels, whereby even Eskom itself will not become sustainable in a regulated industry as they operate.
Let's leave it there. Let's go back to Dr. Ngubane. He's live with us in Durban this afternoon. Dr. Ngubane, do you still stand by that this was a good agreement with Tegeta and Optimum? You stand by that it was the best option available there to you?
The quality of supply, the volumes, the megajoules, all fit in with our plans. And so this was a good deal. We want to promote it and we want to make it grow, because there's still huge areas where we can have cheaper coal supplied and therefore save billions of rands for the taxpayer and the consumer.
I just want to get your views on the Citypress headline. It says, how Eskom bailed out the Guptas. Would you go with that? I mean, how does that make you feel?
Well, this is typical of Citypress. Sensationalism, scaremongering, and at times even outright lies in order to sell their papers.
Interesting. I guess many people feel that. They've gone into some detail on the timing of the purchases of these mines. I'm chatting to Tsepo Khadima. He's a political analyst joining us in studio. Fikile Bili, also an economist, as well as Nazim Hawa, the CEO of Oak Bay Investments. Nazim, are you concerned that this continued sort of ranting on about the Gupta family and now the Public Protector's investigation? Are you concerned that government are asking, well, she's asking for an extra 3 million rand to continue these investigations into the Gupta family and state capture?
Well, you know, with the Public Protector, I almost want to offer the 3 million, but I think we'll be accused of capturing the Public Protector then. So I can't offer the 3 million. But, you know, if it was to end the continuous speculation, I'd be very happy to offer the 3 million. But, you know, the difficulty for us, and, you know, a question we always debate amongst ourselves is, since 1994, the question we ask ourselves, which new black-owned entity has survived without being a 25% BE recipient? And, you know, while we contemplate that, I'll challenge everyone here and say zero. Nobody has survived. We're probably one of the first black-owned companies to be able to play in this space. None of our deals are BE deals on the basis of handouts from the historically advantaged companies. And I think that does create a bit of animosity, if I can call it that. Simply because we'll pay our own way. Optimum, we surprised everybody by being able to pay the price and get the business. I'm very, very happy to hear the compliment from my colleague on the right. We're very happy that we could close that deal.
But the concern is how you got the business.
Well, you know, again, I'm going to say to you, I led the negotiations for Optimum with a team of management. No Gupta person was anywhere close to that negotiation. No Zuma person was close to that negotiation. I didn't go to Switzerland. The Minister of Mines, he said at one of our breakfast briefings that he's visited every single CEO of every single, well, his plan is to, and that was part of his regular engagement with the CEO of Glencore. But, you know, again, let me go back to this optimum deal. We started negotiating back in June last year. Twice, Glencore walked away saying they had a better offer than ours. Twice, we accepted their offer. Twice, they came back at their request. They restarted negotiations. So there was no pressure ever on Glencore to do this deal. In fact, this was not our first option. We were looking at 4 acquisitions. This was probably number 3 in our list. We thought the other 2 were much more attractive. But we've got it. We've managed to turn it around. And let me tell you what optimum the deal has done. Besides everything else, it has secured power. It is the sole supplier of coal to Hendrina. Hendrina supplies, I think, 13% of Eskom's total coal power. So we've secured electricity. We've stopped load shedding by buying this business. We've secured jobs for over 3,500 people. Because if the mine was liquidated, they would lose their jobs and their families. The town of Hendrina is supplied by a water filtration plant on the mine, where they clean the water from the mine and supply the town. We'd have affected water supply to that town.
Explain to me where Exxaro fits into this, because there are concerns that they were sort of shunted out at the last minute. Where do they fit into this whole process?
Well, Exxaro was mining Arnott mine. It's one of what's known as a cost-plus model mine. They had a 40-year contract with Eskom, which came to an end at the end of December 2015. From reading some of the statements this weekend, they were getting 1,132 rand from Eskom for that. Eskom, I think, if I read all the news clippings, and I can base it only on news clippings, since March last year, Eskom was saying to Exxaro, we have to renegotiate the pricing if we're going to continue. But Eskom, in good governance terms, put it out to tender in September, I think. We're not one of the long-term tenderers. We're only benefiting out of a short-term relationship with them, as are 6 or 7 other companies.
So it's just a 6-month contract, as I understand it?
Well, no. We got a 1-month contract. We then got a 2-month contract. We now have a 3-month contract. Okay. We don't know what will happen at the end of September. Eskom could decide to give it to somebody else. We don't know. We hope that we stay in the running. And I think part of this campaign, it's very clear to me, this campaign is to drive people from doing business with us. It must be so hot for Eskom to ever enter a contract with Tegeta that they will never, ever do it again. And I think our media are playing a part. You know, I really call it media capture. This is media capture at its best. They want to stop us from doing any new business. And the best way to do it, do business with Tegeta or Oak Bay at your peril. We will spotlight you. We will do so much damage to your reputation, you'll never, ever do business with them again.
On the money issue, quickly, I'll come to you now. On the money issue, obviously there's Sunday Times allegations as well as to, you know, where the money came, money laundering, real concerns about the money, considering the bank accounts were closed. Try and quell those accusations.
Very simply, bring on the investigation. It's very hard for us to respond to a nameless source that makes accusations through a newspaper article. The Reserve Bank should visit us. Let them come and unannounced. Let me ask them to come unannounced and check our books. We are that confident. At the moment, I chair the executive committee. We're in charge of the business. We're in charge of what's in the bank accounts, what goes in and what goes out. I am totally satisfied there's no problem there. So my challenge is, let's not do a whispering campaign. If the Reserve Bank wants an investigation, come and sit with us. Very happy to do it.
Simple.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know how long Mr. Hauer has been with the group and with Tegeta itself. But as a former investment banker, I can clearly recall in the early days of the Mineral Petroleum Resources Development Act being introduced, that Tegeta was one of the early companies that I got to know of that were looking and applying for various coal concessions in the country, which I maintain that based on historically what had happened, that the big 4 mining companies had already kept what was geologically vast and viable, that Tegeta was competing with a range of other companies, smaller ones. So for me, it's a good thing to see that 10 years on from that time, they are still in business and they seem to have grown and continuing to do what I think is expected of any new entrant in the business. So they must be applauded. I find it very unfortunate and very dangerous that in this country we continue to run with a narrative that, listen, all are equal, but others are more equal than the rest of us. And that is very unfortunate, because in all that bickering, in all that malicious gossip that goes around, the number of jobs that have been destroyed as a result. And on this, I would like to once again call for a greater regulation and control of the manner in which the media conducts itself, particularly the print media. And I, too, have been a victim and of actually the same company, the same media company, Naspers and more so Citypress, whereby they continue to publish falsehood that is malicious against certain companies, but without even taking accountability for the harm that they caused not only to the economy, but also to the image of many other people who find it very difficult to do business. The effect of this article today is impugning upon the integrity of people like Dr. Ben Ngubane, Mr. Brian Molefe, who actually have got a very difficult, important job in this country of ensuring that this economy cannot grow unless we have got reliable, cost-efficient, environmentally friendly produced power, electricity. Without it, we have nothing. And therefore, we should be looking at ways of saying, how do we support ESCOM in ensuring that those three key objectives, which I believe should be fundamental to our energy policy, are achieved and are maintained. I cannot really, for the life of me, understand why we would be frowning upon coal that is supplied at the cost that is half of what the other company was supplying at. We should be applauding them. And why such a thing, I find it really to be tragic in the most. But I believe until the print media in this country is controlled and it is regulated, and that there is punitive sanction in those instances whereby they publish falsehood, we as a republic, we are going downward a hill where we will end up being a sad African republic.
Thanks very much. One last question to Dr. Ngubane. We are running out of time. Dr. Ngubane, I guess looking ahead now to the winter, are we looking good for load shedding?
Absolutely. There will be no load shedding this winter. We have guaranteed it to the President and to the people of South Africa. We will continue to take business decisions that are based on commercial sense and commercial integrity, and will always ensure, as we do now, that all our procurement decisions are properly audited by independent auditors.
Dr. Ngubane, appreciate your time this afternoon. That's where we're going to leave it with you. I know it is a Sunday afternoon. That is Dr. Ben Ngubane there, Chairman of ESCOM, joining us live there from Durban. Nazim, one last question to you. Did the Minister travel with the Guptas to sort out this deal with Glencore?
Absolutely not, and I think, that question has been answered 20 times both by the Minister and ourselves. But again, it doesn't suit the narrative of some of our journalists. There was no involvement by the Minister in closing this matter. The thing that bothers me most is, when we do a deal like this, the historically advantaged companies seem to want to argue that us darkies, people like myself, people like my colleagues here, are not able to do these deals and therefore need some help to do it. It really is a bit of a personal affront when we hear these kinds of stories.
Now, there are reports that the Reserve Bank are investigating the money laundering by the Guptas through an Indian bank. Does that concern you? Is it again damaging the story and putting it out there?
I think the fact that some media who claim to be investigative journalists are publishing nameless sources without corroboration does bother me. So I think it's unprofessional, and I think it impugns our reputations. It creates questions where no questions should be. But we're very happy for the Reserve Bank to do this investigation. There's no concern from our part at all.
Fikile, let's wrap it up with you. Your final comments, looking at everything, trying to wrap things up, looking at the deal, looking at the Guptas. Where do you stand on this?
I just want to say, first of all, I'm grateful for the deployment of Brian Molefe from Transnet to ESCOM. He was good at Transnet. He has turned around ESCOM. by him being at Eskom, he has saved our economy because we don't have load shedding, and to the rest of Eskom employees. But politically, can you just try, if you want to lobby for your party, or if you want to return to power, don't involve private sector. Because now the whole country is focusing on the Guptas and the Nkandlas and the Zumas. But what about other companies? Have the media ever investigated private sector? Why are they into Guptas and government? Is there nothing else to be investigated in this country if you're all worried? Every day we read about Guptas and Zuma. For example, Zuma is not a supply chain manager. Do you understand me? Why do you talk about him every time when you have a problem against the Guptas? Why every time you have the problem with the Guptas, you talk about Zuma? Why can't the media focus on other issues that are very pressing? I mean, the same mining industry is very manipulated, where you find that they don't even have black economic empowerment. Look what's happening in other mines, where the miners have got nothing, they don't have pensions, they die in the mines. Have you ever heard of an Oak Bay mine where an employee has died? Just that tells you that they even consider safety. So we want to tell you to South Africans, be careful what you read on the media, because these things are funded. They are funded by the capitalists because they want to cause a disorderly situation in this country, which is currently so stable by the current government. So we as black business in South Africa, we are grateful for the efforts done by this government, and we are going to support it going forward. We are not going to allow cheap politics to discredit our government.
That's where we're going to have to leave it. We are out of time. We appreciate your debate, Nazim. I know it's a busy day for you. Thanks very much for coming on and just clarifying things. And from my side, clarity. And Nazim never ever briefed me on anything, any questions. He said it was a totally clean slate in terms of my questioning today. Appreciate Tsepo, your time, and Fikile, your time as well. Thanks very much for joining us. That's where we're going to have to leave our debate today. Stay tuned to ANN7. We're going to take a short break. All your news headlines up next.